Undertale is a role-playing game that utilises bullet hell mechanics to create difficulty. These attacks are usually simple near the start, but they only get progressively harder as the game goes on. And while there are some particularly nasty patterns that can catch the player off guard, dedicated runners within the challenge community have been able to brave these incredible challenges and set runs that were previously unheard of. Sans? Nope. Toriel? Nuh-uh. Papyrus? Flowey? Really difficult, but possible. It cannot be underestimated that the challenge run community is incredibly strong. Some runners have even gone as far as to do multiple challenges in a single run, or in other words, complete an entire route without getting hit. Genocide was first no-hitted by Eenox in 2017, and Neutral didn't see its first victor until 4 years later. But what about Pacifist? Why hasn't this run been done yet? The game has been out for 10 years now, and the challenge run community hasn't done a no-hit Pacifist run yet? Is it even possible? Well, in theory, but there's a catch. No matter how good a player is, there's one obstacle in the entire run that's insurmountable, and it takes over an hour and 40 minutes to get to it every single time. That obstacle is Asriel Dreamer. To further visualise how ridiculous this run actually is, we need to take a trip back in time. In 2016, a runner by the name of Chris Lee completed the second phase of Asriel Dreamer without taking damage. But as this was over a year after the game was released, you might be scratching your head a bit. How did it take this long? Well, it's because of this. This is Asriel's spam attack. The fact that this is dodgeable at all is likely an oversight from the developer, as it's meant to be treated as some form of scripted damage to make the player feel like they're in danger of dying. Here's how the attack works. When Asriel spawns a comet from his hands, the game creates an invisible target object that follows the player by moving 3 units per frame. This is why sometimes when you stall in the saving segment, you can get comets that go far off screen. But there's a problem with that. These comets have random speeds, so they don't always lock in on the player. This is what makes the spam attack so difficult, as the density of the comets here is highly intimidating and there's a very high chance that they can overlap, or give an impossible pattern. Asriel's final form on its own is nothing to sniff at. In fact, it wouldn't be until 2020 where the player Eenox did both phases in one run without taking a hit, including the spam attack. According to him, it took 40 to 50 hours to do it all in one run, and mentions that the attack is only impossible to dodge 97% of the time. Where did this percentage come from? To get a better understanding of this, it would be best to take a look at some data. Out of 200 times, how many Asriel spam attacks are actually possible? This can be determined by playing the spam attack itself using the Undertale Godhome mod at 50% speed. Slower speeds are important because it allows for real-time analysis on the fly. The attacks were analysed by looking at the comet positions and how precise some dodges can get. Precision was also important in the analysis because comets that are closer together are more precise. After 200 tries, the data confirms that the attack is only possible to dodge 22.5% of the time. Huh, interesting. But how many of those are actually humanly possible? Since they were measured at 50% speed, the estimates have to be adjusted for human reflexes and readability. Adjusting for these parameters, the attacks are only humanly possible to avoid 11.5% of the time. It seems like a really long stretch to say this, but as the attempts grow, the final results hardly ever change, so this can be confirmed as a plausible data analysis. And finally, the measurement of time. How long would it take to get a no-hit Pacifist run? To get a more accurate result, it's best to take the amount of time from each Asriel no-hit and get an average. The recorded statistics from 3 different people shows that it takes around 40 hours for someone to get a full no-hit Asriel Dreamer. It takes 7 minutes on average to reach the spam attack, so it's expected that no-hit Asriel Dreamer will take 343 attempts for the average player based on this data. Of course, someone can be lucky and get it earlier, but because luck is a major factor in this challenge, this estimate should be enough. There was only ever one Pacifist run that was no-hit all the way up to Asriel Dreamer, which sadly failed on the first phase. But because this is a theoretical estimate based on data analysis, this failure can be ignored. So if it takes an hour and 40 minutes to reach the spam attack, how much time is one looking at before they can guarantee a perfect run? This is assuming that one makes it to Asriel Dreamer every time, which sadly won't happen due to mental block and other luck-based parts potentially messing up the run. If a player manages to reach Asriel Dreamer every single time without taking a single hit throughout the entire run, it would take them this long. 572 hours, or roughly 24 days straight. But of course, this is only if they get a perfect run every time. How likely is it that someone can actually make it this far? From recording statistics, a no-hit run that passes Flowey, otherwise known as the neutral route no-hit, takes 30 attempts on average, or roughly 40 to 50 hours, adjusting for variance in strategies. However, this estimate needs to be adjusted as well, because not every neutral attempt is going to make it past Flowey, so doubling the count seems like a fair adjustment. So in terms of probability, if a no-hit neutral run is a 1 in 60 chance for the average runner who has the capability of doing it, taking between 90 and 100 hours to complete, then... At first glance, it does not seem like a reasonable goal. But this is also assuming that the runner in question is playing for this exact amount of time. Let's look at how a normal grind usually goes. Typically, any kind of runner who has a goal in mind, whether that be speedrun or challenge run, plays for 2 to 3 hours before taking the rest of the day off. This is because mental fatigue sets in, which will hinder the runner's performance, and therefore it's foolish to go any further. Of course, some grinds can last longer, but with a run of this caliber, being just short of 2 hours, it's fair to say that at most one is only able to get 3 attempts out of any given session, accounting for some early fails. Using this estimation and adjusting for breaks, sleep, and having a normal life, the count quickly approaches values of which they simply cannot be comprehended. But wait a second. This is an assumption based on data that is already known from other top runners. To gauge a true estimation, we need to take a look at a more in-depth analysis. We need something more concrete than a rough estimation. We need a probability. Unfortunately, because the amount of neutral route no-hits are scarce, there's very little to work with regarding that, but we can recalculate the 1 in 30 chance that was estimated earlier, as completing any neutral no-hit after the first one is easier to complete due to nerves not being as present as they were before. I have a sheet of my own from attempting Pacifist before, so let's see how rough that estimate actually is. My measured probability of getting a no-hit neutral run on pace is 17%. But the total number of runs that have ever actually passed Flowey at all is 4, plus the one from the first neutral no-hit I've ever done, but since the strategies vary between neutral with aborted Genocide and Pacifist neutral, this run doesn't count for the estimation. 4 out of 50 attempts, or when simplified, a 1 in 13 chance. Whoa, guess it's true what I said, huh? Bear in mind that this is only an estimation, as the chances of getting a neutral no-hit once every 13 tries is simply above the bar for expectation. But what about the run after that? True Lab is another problematic section due to the attack patterns of Memory Head and Reaper Bird. Endogeny can be skipped with the stick, so it doesn't interfere with the final count. True Lab has been measured to have a 54% success rate in practice. Using practice for calculations will have a positive influence on the final result, therefore it should be stated that there's a margin of error which is quite difficult to determine and I don't know how to do, as the level of consistency can vary per player. This brings the chances up to 1 in 24 to get a run up to Asriel Dreamer. Now this is where it gets complicated. Since each phase has a different success rate, we have to measure them individually. My Phase 1 success rate is about 60%, Phase 2 at 34.5%, the saving segment is consistent so it can be excluded from the data, and finally, the spam attack success rate is 5.8%. This puts the odds of a no-hit Asriel at roughly 1.2%. This puts the odds at 1 in 1,853 to get a no-hit Pacifist run. Now how much time would that take? Assuming that each run is able to make it this far, which again won't happen, it would take just over 3,000 hours to complete, or 1,000 days when adjusting for breaks, sleep and general life. While that seems outlandish as well, it's also not the final answer. The thing is though, with every passing run and practice session, the chances can increase. But the thing is, the spam attack has already reached the point of diminishing returns. But that doesn't mean that it's final either. So what is the true probability? Well, remember the estimation from the beginning of the video? If the chances of getting a humanly possible pattern are 11.5%, realistically, we can adjust the estimate for every other problematic encounter as well. Let's say that someone has reached their peaks in skill and consistency. These estimates are very overly generous, so don't expect anything realistic. Neutral no-hit goes from 17% to 35%, True Lab from 54% to 70%, and lastly, Asriel Dreamer. The reason why Asriel Dreamer doesn't go up as much is because no matter how skilled the player is, the outcome is always dependent on luck. While this luck cannot be breached, it's possible to get more runs up to it, therefore increasing the probability further. So what is the limit for Asriel Dreamer? 2.5% consistency. This is because while it is possible to max out Phase 1 and the start of Phase 2, it is also possible to run into situations where the attack cannot be dodged with human reflexes, and sadly the spam attack cannot be improved any further. Flowey almost borders on this as well, but Asriel goes well over the line with this. So adjusting for this hypothetical perfection, what are the odds now? One in 353, or almost 600 hours of gameplay, assuming again that every run makes it to Asriel. If we apply my no-hit neutral ratio, then the numbers aren't quite so forgiving. 1 in 4,537. Yeah, I don't think we're going to be seeing this run anytime. Of course, that's just a theory, but how close is it really? Well, there's only ever one runner who has attempted this, and that was me. I have 75 hours myself, and the best run I got was 3 hits, or 4 hits if you only count runs that were done in one go. The average hit count on Asriel's spam attack is 2 hits, so assuming things remain the way they are, the perfect run is only 1 hit away. Of course, it's not perfect in the true nature of the challenge, but this is as close to no-hit true pacifist as we can currently get. While yes, it is theoretically possible to do it all in without getting hit, the odds are so unlikely that it is way out of the realm of feasibility. It's just too brutal. Now, of course, this is all within the realm of the rule set. You could say that Asriel's spam attack doesn't count as getting hit since you're meant to get hit there anyway, or that you could skip Flowey in New Game Plus and do the run on that to save yourself another headache. Unfortunately, as much as I would like to say otherwise, we don't live in that timeline. But there's another run out there, so prestigious, so tedious, so difficult, that there are also very few people exploring it, but it's hella more likely than No Hit True Pacifist ever will be. Next time, I will talk about another challenge that may be the best candidate for the hardest Undertale Deltarune base game run. See you then!